boss. The black dog in the corner is staring at the code.
Brooks noticed her first. Harlan turned, laughed.
You think you understand this? Can you even read, little girl?
Let me try.
She said calmly.
Even my best men can't solve this.
He tossed the letter down.
12 men, 3 days, nothing!
I can solve it.
Brooks stepped closer.
Careful. She touches it, we disinfect the whole table.
Silence. Harlan pulled out a chair.
Sit. Show us what that little brain can do.
He turned to his men.
Give the maid a turn. She'll entertain us.
The room erupted. Bonnie didn't sit. Set the cloth down. Picked up the pen. 1 minute. Not a word. When she put it down, every man in that room had just made the biggest mistake of his life. 3 days earlier. The alarm didn't wake Bonnie Crawford. She was already up. 4:45 in the morning, same as yesterday. Same as the day before. Same as every day for the past 3 years. She pulled the thin blanket off and sat on the edge of the narrow cot in the basement room. No window. 1 light bulb. A sink with a crack running down the middle. The floor was cold concrete. She didn't own slippers. The room smelled of bleach and damp stone. A single shelf held 2 folded uniforms, a toothbrush, and a brown leather notebook she never let anyone see. By 5 o'clock, she was on her knees in the main hallway, scrubbing marble floors with a brush that had lost half its bristles. The mansion had 14 rooms, 6 bathrooms, a conference hall, and a kitchen the size of a small apartment. She cleaned all of it, every day, alone. The guards changed shifts at 6. They walked past her without looking down. One of them once stepped on her hand by accident. He didn't apologize. He didn't even notice. Nobody said good morning. Nobody said her name. Most of them didn't know her name. To the guards, she was the maid. To the cooks, she was, "Hey, you." To Warren Brooks, Harlan's right hand, she was the black one. He said it the way someone talks about a stain on the carpet, something that shouldn't be there, but costs too much to remove. 3 years. Not once did anyone ask where she came from. Not once did anyone ask why a woman who moved the way she did, who watched the way she did, who listened the way she did, was scrubbing toilets in a Mafia mansion. They didn't ask because they didn't care. She was furniture, and furniture doesn't have a past. Victor Harlan ran the east side of the city the way a butcher runs a shop. Quietly, efficiently, with a knife always within reach. He controlled ports, warehouses, judges, and cops. His name didn't appear in newspapers. It didn't need to. Everyone who mattered already knew it. He ate breakfast at exactly 7:30. Black coffee. No sugar. 2 slices of toast cut diagonal. He never thanked Bonnie for preparing it. He never looked at her while she poured the coffee. Once, she spilled a drop on the saucer. He stared at the drop for 3 seconds, then looked at her like she was something stuck to the bottom of his shoe. She wiped it and left. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to. She was invisible to him, and she preferred it that way. On a Tuesday morning, a black envelope arrived. No return address, no stamp, just a wax seal, a serpent eating its own tail. Harlan's men found it on the front steps, tucked under a brick. Inside, a single sheet of paper filled with rows of symbols, numbers, and letters that made no sense to anyone who looked at it. A note was attached. Coordinates to a shipment worth 8 figures. Decode the cipher, find the cargo. Fail, and a rival family walks away with everything. Harlan called Declan Moore first. Moore was 26, a hacker who'd broken into 3 federal databases before his 20th birthday. He stared at the paper for 6 hours, ran every decryption algorithm he had, tried brute force, tried pattern matching, tried frequency analysis. Nothing. He threw his laptop across the table and said 2 words. It's impossible. Then came Philip Hayes, ex-CIA, 15 years in signals intelligence. He studied the letter for a full day, cross-referencing encryption methods from Cold War archives. He made calls to former colleagues in Virginia. Nobody recognized the cipher. Dead end. Warren Brooks tried last. He had contacts in every intelligence agency in the country. He called in favors, sent photos of the letter to cryptographers in 3 different time zones: Berlin, Tel Aviv, London. They all came back with the same answer: unknown cipher, possibly custom-built, possibly unbreakable. 3 men, 3 days. The letter sat on the mahogany table like a dare no one could answer. Harlan's patience was a thin wire, and it was starting to snap. Whoever sent that envelope knew things about his operation that no outsider should know. Not knowing was worse than any bullet. On the 3rd evening, Bonnie was cleaning the conference room. She wiped the table in slow circles, the way she always did. Her cloth passed over the letter. She didn't mean to look, but she did. The symbols hit her like a scent from another life. She recognized the structure immediately. Not the specific cipher, but the family, the architecture, the way the characters clustered in groups of 5, the subtle repetition every 7th row. She'd seen this before, not in a textbook, not on a screen. In a classified facility, 3 floors underground, where she once sat at a desk with her name on a brass plate. Dr. Bonnie Crawford, Senior Cryptanalyst, National Security Agency. That was 15 years ago. Before Raymond Walsh, before the accusation, before they took her badge, her clearance, her freedom, her daughter. Everything except the knowledge inside her head. The notebook under her cot held it all. Brown leather, worn soft at the edges. First page in faded ink. NSA, Cryptanalysis Division. The rest was filled with equations, cipher trees, frequency tables, written from memory during sleepless nights over 15 years. It was the only proof that she had once been someone. The only evidence that the woman on her knees, scrubbing marble, had once held the nation's secrets in her hands. Bonnie set the cloth down and stared at the letter. Her hands were still, her breathing steady. But inside her chest, something she hadn't felt in years was waking up. She could solve it. She knew she could. The structure was advanced, but not alien. Give her a pen and 60 seconds, and that letter would open like a lock. But solving it meant something else. It meant showing what she knew. It meant questions she couldn't answer without unraveling 15 years of silence. The name Bonnie Crawford, the real one, the one in federal databases and court records and a daughter's fading memory, would surface again. And the last time that name surfaced, it destroyed her. She picked up the cloth, wiped the table once more, walked out. That night she lay on her cot, staring at the light bulb, the notebook on her chest. She opened it to the last page. Blank. She'd been saving it. For what, she never knew. Now she knew. She could stay invisible, stay safe, stay nothing. Or she could pick up that pen and risk everything she'd buried for 15 years. By morning, Bonnie Crawford had made her choice. And it was the kind of choice you don't come back from. Morning came, and Bonnie made her decision with the same quiet certainty she brought to everything. No fanfare, no deep breath. She simply got up, folded her blanket, and went to work. By 9 o'clock, the conference room was full again. Harlan sat at the head of the table, jaw tight, cigar unlit between his fingers. Declan Moore had his laptop open but wasn't typing. Philip Hayes leaned against the wall with his arms crossed, staring at nothing. Warren Brooks paced near the window, phone pressed to his ear, arguing with someone in German. The letter sat in the center of the table, untouched, unsolved, mocking them all. Bonnie pushed the door open with her hip, carrying a bucket and cloth. She started at the far end of the room, wiping the sideboard, the windowsill, the edge of the bookshelf. Nobody looked at her. She was background noise. White cloth on dark wood, the only sound in a room full of defeated men. She worked her way toward the table, slowly, deliberately. When she reached the corner closest to the letter, she stopped wiping. Her eyes settled on the page. The symbols were clearer than she'd expected. Cleaner. Whoever built this cipher was good, but not as good as the people who'd trained her. She could see the skeleton of the encryption, the 5-character clusters, the 7th row reset, the substitution layer hiding beneath the transposition. It was elegant. It was also solvable. Brooks noticed first. He stopped pacing, tilted his head. Then a grin spread across his face, slow and mean, like a dog spotting something small to chase. "Boss, the black dog in the corner is staring at the code." The room turned. Harlan looked up, saw Bonnie standing there, cloth in hand, eyes on the letter. He leaned back in his chair. And then he laughed. Not a chuckle, not a smirk, a full, open-mouthed laugh that bounced off every wall in the room. "You think you understand this? Can you even read, little girl?" Bonnie didn't flinch. "Let me try," she said. Calm, even, like she was asking to pour more coffee. The laughter doubled. Moore closed his laptop to watch. Hayes uncrossed his arms. Brooks put his phone away. Every pair of eyes locked onto her, not with concern, but with sick entertainment. "Even my best men can't solve this." Harlan tossed the letter toward her. It slid across the mahogany and stopped at the edge. "And you want to try?" "I can solve it." Brooks stepped closer. "Careful. She touches it. We disinfect the whole table." He looked around the room. Laughter, nods. Someone pulled out a phone to record. Another man cupped his hands around his mouth. "Go on, sweetheart. Show us what 3 years of toilet training taught you." Harlan raised his hand. Silence. He pulled out a chair. The legs scraped against marble. "Sit. Show us what that little brain can do." He turned to his men, grinning. "Give the maid a turn. She'll entertain us." The room erupted. Bonnie didn't sit. She set the cloth on the table, picked up a pen from the holder next to Declan's laptop, leaned over the letter, and began to write. The laughter continued for the first 10 seconds. Brooks made another joke, something about a monkey with a crayon. Moore snickered. Someone in the back clapped slowly, sarcastically. Philip Hayes whispered to the man next to him, $10 says she draws a smiley face." By 20 seconds, the laughter started thinning. Bonnie's pen hadn't stopped. It moved across the margin in small, precise strokes. No hesitation, no pausing, no crossing out. By 30 seconds, the room was quiet. Brooks had stopped smiling. Moore leaned forward, squinting at what she was writing. His face changed. The smirk dissolved into something else. Confusion, then recognition, then fear. By 45 seconds, nobody was breathing. Hayes had moved to the table. He could see the decoded coordinates forming in the margin, one after another, clean and exact. His mouth opened. No sound came out. At 60 seconds, Bonnie put the pen down, straightened up, picked up her cloth, and walked back to the sideboard to continue wiping, as if nothing had happened. The room was silent, the kind of silence that has weight, the kind that presses down on your chest and makes you aware of your own heartbeat. Brooks stared at the margin. His phone was still recording. He lowered it slowly, like a man realizing he'd just filmed his own humiliation. Harlan didn't move for a full 5 seconds. Then he reached across the table and pulled the letter toward him. His eyes scanned the decoded text. He looked at Moore. Check it. Moore's fingers hit the keyboard. 30 seconds later, he looked up. His face had lost all color. It's right. Every coordinate. Every single one. Harlan set his cigar down. The first time anyone had seen him do that voluntarily. He looked at Bonnie the way a man looks at a locked door he's just discovered in his own house. Something had been behind it all along, and he'd walked past it 1,000 times. Everyone out. Brooks opened his mouth. Harlan didn't repeat himself. He just looked at Brooks. That was enough. They filed out one by one. The door closed. The phone screens went dark. 2 people remained. The most powerful man on the East Side and the woman who'd scrubbed his floors for 3 years. Harlan walked to where Bonnie was wiping the sideboard. She didn't stop, didn't turn. Who are you? Bonnie set the cloth down, turned to face him. For the first time in 3 years, she looked directly into his eyes. No fear, no submission, no performance. Someone your best men will never be. The words landed like a slap. Harlan's jaw tightened, not from anger, but from the nauseating realization that the most valuable person in his empire had been invisible to him for 3 years. Scrubbing, serving, listening, knowing. He pulled out a chair, not for show this time. Sit, please. She sat. I need you, he said. The word need sounded foreign in his mouth, like a language he hadn't spoken since childhood. I know. Name your terms. Bonnie folded her hands on the table, the same hands that had scrubbed his toilets an hour ago. 3 conditions. Her voice was steady, unhurried. First, nobody in this house calls me Maid again. Not you, not Brooks, not anyone. Done. Second, I work on my own terms, my hours, my methods. No one watches, no one questions. Harlan nodded slowly. And the third? When the time comes, you help me with something. I won't tell you what, but when I ask, you don't hesitate. You don't ask why. The room was quiet for a long time. Harlan studied her face, looking for a tell, a crack, something that would explain how a woman who scrubbed floors knew things his best men didn't. He found nothing, just stillness, the kind that comes from years of practice or years of pain. Deal. Bonnie stood, picked up her cloth, walked to the door. She didn't shake his hand. She didn't smile. She didn't look back. Harlan didn't know it yet, but that third condition, the one she wouldn't explain, would cost him more than any deal he'd ever made. And it would bring back the one person Bonnie had spent 15 years trying to reach. The next morning, Bonnie didn't clean. For the first time in 3 years, she woke up and didn't reach for the bucket. She sat on the edge of her cot, hands on her knees, staring at the wall. The notebook lay open beside her. The blank last page wasn't blank anymore. She'd written one word on it during the night. Ready. Harlan had cleared out the storage room next to his office. When Bonnie walked in, there was a desk, a laptop, 2 monitors, and a chair that still had the price tag on it. No windows, no decorations, just tools. "This is yours," Harlan said from the doorway. He didn't step inside, like he was waiting for permission to enter a room in his own house. Bonnie sat down, opened the laptop, and for the first time in 15 years, Dr. Bonnie Crawford went back to work. She hadn't always been this, the woman on her knees, the invisible one. 15 years ago, Bonnie Crawford held a level 5 security clearance at the National Security Agency. She worked in the cryptanalysis division, a windowless floor 3 stories underground at Fort Meade, Maryland. Her desk had a brass nameplate. Her team broke codes that protected or threatened national security. She was one of 11 people in the country authorized to access a classification tier so secret it didn't have a public name. Her supervisor was Raymond Walsh. Charming, political, the kind of man who remembered your birthday and forgot your contributions. Walsh had been selling intelligence to foreign buyers for years. Small packages at first, then larger ones. When an internal audit began closing in, he needed a scapegoat. He chose the person no one would fight for. The black woman. The single mother. The one without powerful friends. He planted files on her terminal, fabricated access logs, built a trail so clean that even Bonnie couldn't prove it wasn't hers. She was arrested on a Tuesday morning, handcuffed at her desk, walked past her colleagues, people she'd worked beside for 7 years. Not one of them looked her in the eye. The trial was closed. The evidence was classified. Her lawyer had 30 days to prepare a defense against an agency with unlimited resources. She was convicted in 4. They took her clearance, her pension, her reputation. Then they took her daughter. Elise was 5 years old, brown eyes, a gap between her front teeth. She called Bonnie Mama B. Child Protective Services removed her 3 days after the sentencing. The judge said a convicted traitor couldn't be trusted with a child. Bonnie screamed in that courtroom, the only time in her life she lost control. They dragged her out. She never saw Elise again. When she was released 2 years later, she had nothing. No career, no contacts, no family. The name Bonnie Crawford appeared on federal databases with a red flag that guaranteed no employer would touch her. She changed her name, moved 4 times, worked kitchens, laundromats, hotel rooms. Eventually, she found a listing for a live-in housekeeper at a private estate. No background check, cash payment. The kind of job that existed in the spaces between legality. She took it. And for 3 years, she disappeared. Until now. The transformation in the mansion didn't happen overnight. It happened in layers, like paint being stripped off a wall, revealing something older and stronger underneath. The first task Harlan gave her was simple. A rival crew had been communicating through encrypted messages buried in shipping manifests. His men had intercepted the files but couldn't decode them. Bonnie dismantled the entire batch in 40 minutes. What had taken 3 professionals 3 days to fail at, she finished before lunch. Harlan read the results at his desk. His cigar burned down to ash without a single puff. He looked at Moore. "How long would this have taken you?" Moore stared at the floor. "Weeks. Maybe never." The second task came 2 days later. Harlan's communication network had been compromised. Someone was listening. Bonnie mapped the entire system in one night. By morning, she'd identified 3 leaks, 2 moles feeding a federal task force, and a back door in Moore's own encryption that a teenager could have exploited. Moore didn't speak to anyone for 2 days. The third task changed everything. A $12 million shipment sat at the port. The rival family knew about it. 72 hours before they'd move. The container's code lock rotated every 6 hours. Nobody could crack the pattern. Bonnie cracked it in 11 minutes, wrote the full rotation on a napkin, slid it across Harlan's desk, walked out without waiting for thanks. $12 million. Secured. Because of a napkin. Word spread through the mansion like fire through dry grass. Guards whispered. Cooks talked. Brooks heard about the napkin and went quiet. He stood by the window, staring at the garden where Bonnie used to hang laundry, and something cracked behind his eyes. Not respect, not yet, but the first fracture in his contempt. Declan Moore broke rank first. He showed up at her door one evening carrying 2 cups of coffee, set one on her desk, sat in the corner, watched her work for 20 minutes. Then, quietly, "The back door in my protocol. How did you find it?" "Because I built protocols like that for a living," Bonnie said. "A long time ago." Within a week, they'd developed a rhythm. Bonnie decoded. Moore implemented. Mind and hands. They didn't discuss the past or the conference room. They talked about ciphers, algorithms, the architecture of secrets. For Moore, a young man who'd built his identity on being the smartest in the room, it was the first time he'd met someone who made him feel like a student. He didn't resent it. He leaned in. Harlan's change was quieter. He stopped leaving his coffee cup for Bonnie to wash. He said, "Thank you," once, under his breath, handing her a decoded file. Barely audible, but she heard it. One night past midnight, a knock came. Harlan stood in the doorway, holding a plate, steak, potatoes, a glass of water. "You haven't eaten," he said. For 3 years, she'd prepared his meals, set his table, cleared his dishes. Not once had anyone done the same for her. The steak was overcooked. The potatoes were cold. She ate every bite. But trust was never Bonnie's endgame. Every decoded file, every secured shipment, it all led somewhere. Somewhere she'd been heading for 15 years. Raymond Walsh. She searched during gaps between tasks, carefully, using the intelligence networks Harlan had given her. Walsh had risen fast after Bonnie's conviction. Senior analyst, deputy director, now a consultant with top-secret clearance moving between agencies and defense contractors like a shark through warm water. What she found beneath the surface made her hands go still. Walsh was still dirty. The man who'd framed her for selling secrets was still selling them. Only now his buyers weren't foreign governments. They were criminal organizations, cartels, arms dealers, and one name kept appearing in his transactions, hidden behind shell companies and offshore accounts. The rival family. The same people who'd sent Harlan the encrypted letter. Bonnie leaned back, screen light flickering against her face, heart pounding, hands perfectly still. The man who destroyed her life was doing business with the enemy of the man who gave her a second chance. She'd found the thread that connected everything. She opened the notebook. Below "Ready," she wrote 3 letters in small, precise handwriting. R.W. Something else grew alongside the work. Something Bonnie hadn't expected and didn't know how to name. Every night, after the monitors went dark and the hallways emptied, she pulled the notebook out. Not the cipher pages, the back cover. Tucked inside was a photograph, creased, faded, held together by tape. A little girl in a yellow dress, sitting on a porch step, smiling at whoever was behind the camera. Elise, 5 years old in that picture, 20 now, somewhere in the world, maybe with a new family, maybe with a new name. Maybe she didn't remember Mama B at all. Bonnie had searched for her daughter the same way she searched for everything, methodically, patiently, across years. But Elise's adoption records were sealed. Her new identity was protected by the same system that had taken her away. Every trail went cold. Every door was locked. Now, for the first time, Bonnie had the tools to open those doors. Harlan's network reached into places the law couldn't, places where sealed records could be unsealed, where locked files could be unlocked. But not yet. First, Walsh. First, Justice. Then, Elise. The photograph went back inside the notebook. The notebook went under the pillow. And Bonnie Crawford lay in the dark, eyes open, listening to the mansion settle around her like a sleeping animal, and planning the next 15 moves in a game only she knew she was playing. 15 years of silence were about to become the loudest sound anyone had ever heard. And the man who thought he'd buried Bonnie Crawford was about to learn that some graves don't stay closed. Raymond Walsh arrived on a Thursday. He came in a black sedan with tinted windows and government plates. 2 men in dark suits flanked him. Not bodyguards, but not civilians either. The kind of men who carried badges and shoulder holsters and never smiled. Harlan met him in the front hall. Handshake. Firm. Brief. The kind of greeting between men who don't trust each other, but need each other too much to say so. Walsh was tall. Silver hair combed straight back. A face that had aged well because it had never carried guilt. He wore a charcoal suit that cost more than most people's rent. His shoes were polished to a mirror shine. Everything about him said control, authority, certainty. He was there to discuss a proposal, a partnership, he called it, a bridge between his government contacts and Harlan's distribution network. Walsh would provide intelligence, advance warning of federal operations, and access to classified shipping routes. In return, Harlan would funnel a percentage of his operations through Walsh's offshore accounts. Clean money in, dirty money out. Everybody wins. It was the kind of deal that made empires, or destroyed them. Harlan led Walsh through the hallway toward the conference room. They passed the kitchen, the library, the staircase to the second floor. Walsh walked with the ease of a man who'd been inside many powerful houses. Nothing impressed him. Nothing made him pause. Until they passed the open door to Bonnie's workroom. She was sitting at her desk, back to the door, 2 monitors glowing in front of her. Her fingers moved across the keyboard in a steady rhythm. She didn't look up. She didn't need to. She'd heard Walsh's voice the moment he walked through the front door. and something inside her chest had turned to ice. 15 years. She would have known that voice in a crowd of 10,000. Walsh stopped walking, one step past the doorway, then half a step back. His eyes narrowed, his jaw tightened. The confident stride broke for exactly 1 second, the way a clock skips a beat before continuing. He knew her. Not the uniform, not the desk, not the monitors. He knew the way she held her shoulders, the angle of her head, the specific stillness of a woman he had personally destroyed. He kept walking, said nothing, but the color in his face had changed. In the conference room, the deal proceeded. Harlan listened. Walsh talked. Numbers were exchanged. Routes were discussed. It was professional, efficient. Two predators circling the same territory, measuring each other's teeth. Then Walsh leaned back, crossed his legs, and changed the subject. That woman, in the room down the hall. Harlan raised an eyebrow. What about her? Where did you find her? She works for me. Why? Walsh uncrossed his legs, leaned forward. His voice dropped half a register, the way it does when a man is about to say something he's rehearsed. Her name is Bonnie Crawford. 15 years ago, she was convicted of selling classified intelligence to foreign governments. Level 5 clearance. She had access to things that could have gotten American operatives killed. He paused, let the weight settle. She's a federal criminal, Victor. A traitor. And she's sitting in your house with access to your operation. Harlan's cigar stopped halfway to his mouth. Walsh wasn't finished. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a manila folder, slid it across the table. Inside, Bonnie's mugshot from 15 years ago, her booking number, a summary of charges, a sentencing document stamped with the seal of a federal court. This is who you're protecting, Victor. Walsh tapped the mugshot with one finger. This woman sat in a room full of classified documents and sold them to the highest bidder. American agents were relocated because of what she did. Operations were burned. People could have died. Every word was a lie. Bonnie knew it. Walsh knew it. But the paper looked real. The stamps looked real. The photo of a younger Bonnie, exhausted, eyes red, wrists marked from handcuffs, looked devastatingly real. She's a cockroach, Walsh said, straightening his cuffs. You let one in, they multiply. Get rid of her now, while it's still quiet, before she brings the whole house down. Harlan stared at the mugshot. The woman in the photo looked nothing like the woman who had decoded his letter in 60 seconds. But the federal seal didn't care about talent. It only cared about verdicts. Walsh stood, buttoned his jacket. I'll give you 24 hours to decide. After that, I make the call myself. He left the folder on the table. The mugshot faced up. Bonnie's eyes, younger, broken, but unmistakably hers, stared at the ceiling like a ghost that refused to leave. She did 2 years in federal prison, Walsh continued. She was supposed to disappear after that. The fact that she's here, working for you, using her skills again, that's a violation of her release terms. One phone call from me and she goes back inside. This time, she doesn't come out. The room was quiet. Harlan looked at Walsh the way a man looks at a card he hasn't decided whether to play. What are you suggesting? Cut her loose. Hand her over. I'll make sure she's dealt with quietly. No attention on you, no trail. Consider it a gesture of good faith, a foundation for our partnership. Harlan didn't answer immediately. He smoked, thought, calculated. Walsh had power, real power. government connections that could shield Harlan from federal investigations, or bury him in them. Crossing Walsh meant losing that shield. It meant exposing his entire operation to the same agencies Walsh controlled. By evening, the mansion was divided. Brooks sided with Walsh. Of course he did. "She's a liability," he told Harlan in the hallway. "We survived 3 years without her. We don't need a convicted traitor bringing heat on us." 2 of the senior guards agreed. Philip Hayes stayed neutral, which in that house meant he was afraid. Declan Moore stood alone on the other side. "She's not what he says she is," Moore told Harlan in the kitchen, voice low, door closed. "I've worked with her every day for weeks. The way she thinks, the way she builds systems, that's not someone who sold secrets. That's someone who lived them." "That's not evidence, Declan." "Then ask her. Ask her what really happened." Harlan didn't ask. Not yet. But he didn't hand her over either. That night, Bonnie sat in her workroom with the door locked. The notebook was open on her desk. Not the cipher pages, the early ones. The pages she'd written in prison, documenting everything she remembered about Walsh's operation. Dates, file names, access codes, the pattern of his transactions before the audit, the names he'd contacted, the offshore accounts he'd used. It was all there. 15 years of evidence, recorded in handwriting so small you needed a magnifying glass to read it. She brought it to Harlan at midnight. Set it on his desk without ceremony. "This is who Raymond Walsh really is," she said. "He framed me to save himself. He was selling intelligence then, and he's still selling it now. The people he sells to, they're the same people who sent you that encrypted letter." Harlan opened the notebook, read for a long time, page after page. His cigar went out. He didn't relight it. "This is 15 years old," he said finally. "No court would touch it." "I don't need a court. I need Walsh to make one mistake, one response, one transaction I can catch in real time." "How?" Bonnie sat down across from him. For the first time they were eye to eye. Not boss and maid, not protector and protected. 2 people sitting on opposite sides of a problem that could destroy them both, or set them both free. "I build a trap," she said. "A piece of false intelligence. Something valuable enough that Walsh can't resist passing it to his buyers. I feed it through the same channel he uses to communicate with the rival family. If he takes the bait, he responds. And when he responds, I record everything. Real time. Undeniable." "And if he doesn't take the bait?" Bonnie looked at him. Steady. Calm. The same expression she'd worn when she picked up the pen in the conference room. "He will. I know how he thinks. I spent 7 years studying codes next to him. I know what he can resist and what he can't. And I know the one thing he's never been able to turn down." "What's that?" "Money that's easy and information that's free." Harlan closed the notebook, set it on the desk between them. 2 inches of leather and paper that held 15 years of suffering, patience, and truth. "How long do you need?" 48 hours. He nodded. "You have them." Bonnie stood, took the notebook, walked to the door. "Bonnie." She stopped. It was the first time he'd called her by name. "If this doesn't work, I can't protect you from him." She didn't turn around. "You won't have to." The trap was set within 24 hours. 1 encrypted message, 1 false shipment, 1 irresistible number. All Bonnie needed now was for Raymond Walsh to do what he'd always done best: betray someone for profit. And this time, she'd be watching. She spent the remaining hours preparing. Not the evidence. That was already airtight. She prepared herself. She washed her face in the cracked sink, looked in the small mirror she'd avoided for 3 years. The woman staring back was 47, lines around the eyes, gray at the temples, hands roughened by chemicals and cold water. But the eyes were the same ones that had once read classified documents 3 floors underground. Sharp, clear, unbroken. She pressed her uniform flat with her hands. She didn't own an iron. She didn't own much of anything. But today wasn't about what she wore. It was about what she carried. 15 years of truth compressed into a notebook and 3 encrypted drives. Declan Moore knocked at 7. He brought coffee. Black, no sugar, the way she liked it. He didn't ask if she was ready. He could see it. "The servers are live," he said. 3 independent backups. Even if Walsh's people try to wipe the transmission logs, we've got copies they'll never find. Bonnie took the coffee. "Thank you, Declan." "For the coffee?" "For believing me before you had proof." Moore looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "See you in there." He left. Bonnie drank the coffee standing up. Her hands were steady. Her breathing was even. The photograph of Elise sat on the desk, facing her. 5 years old, yellow dress, gap-toothed smile. Almost, Bonnie thought. Almost. Walsh took the bait in 11 hours. Bonnie had designed the trap the way she used to design classified operations. Clean, layered, impossible to resist. A fake intelligence packet. $22 million in cargo embedded inside an encrypted stream that mimicked the rival family's format. Same cipher, same routing, same digital fingerprint. She fed it into Walsh's channel and waited. His response came at 2:47 in the morning. A small ping on Bonnie's monitor, no louder than a raindrop on glass. But to her, it was the loudest sound she'd heard in 15 years. Walsh had confirmed the shipment, negotiated a percentage, and attached classified federal shipping routes that only someone with active government clearance could access. He hadn't just taken the bait, he'd swallowed it whole. Bonnie saved everything, every packet, every timestamp, copied onto 3 encrypted drives, one for Harlan, one for herself, one hidden in a location only she knew. She closed the laptop, leaned back, and felt something she hadn't allowed herself in 15 years. Relief. Not joy, not triumph, just the quiet, exhausted relief of a woman who had finally set down a stone she'd carried for half her life. She didn't sleep. She sat in the dark, holding Elise's photograph, and waited for morning. Harlan called the meeting for 10 o'clock. Walsh arrived early, confident, smiling. He sat at the head of the table, a seat that wasn't his, but nobody corrected him. That was Walsh. He took space that didn't belong to him and made it look natural. The manila folder with Bonnie's mugshot was still on the table. Walsh glanced at it, smiled. "I assume you've made your decision, Victor." "I have." "Good. Where is she?" The door opened. Bonnie walked in carrying a laptop and the brown leather notebook. Same plain clothes. But something was different. The way she moved, the way she held her shoulders, the way she looked at Walsh. Directly, steadily. The way a surgeon looks at where the incision goes. She sat, opened the laptop, and for the next 12 minutes, she dismantled Raymond Walsh's life. Transaction logs, dates, Amounts: 15 years of intelligence sales in chronological order. Shell companies, offshore accounts, Caymans, Cyprus, Singapore. Walsh's smile faded at minute 2. By minute 5, she played his encrypted communications with the rival family. Then the audio. His own voice at 2:47 a.m., confirming a deal using classified routes. Walsh stood at minute 7. This is fabricated. Entrapment. You can't... Sit down, Raymond. He sat. Not because she told him to, because his legs stopped working. By minute 10, she showed what Walsh had done to her. Planted files, fabricated access logs, manufactured evidence. Her arrest, her sealed trial, the documents she'd reconstructed from memory over 15 years. Minute 12. She closed the laptop, set the notebook on the table, the one she'd kept under her cot for 3 years, under her pillow for 15. Pushed it to the center, next to Walsh's manila folder. 2 folders, 2 truths. One built on fabrication, one built on patience. Walsh was pale. His silver hair looked gray now, not distinguished, just old. His hands shook. The man who'd walked in owning the room now looked like someone waiting for a verdict he already knew. Bonnie didn't shout, didn't cry. Her voice was steady, low, and absolute. You took my name, my career, my freedom. You took my daughter. She was 5, Raymond. 5. She called me Mama B. They dragged me out of a courtroom while she screamed in a hallway I couldn't get back to. Nobody moved. Brooks stared at the table. Moore's jaw was clenched so tight the veins in his neck showed. You took 15 years from me. Floors, kitchens, hotel rooms, silence. You turned everything I was into nothing, so you could keep selling what was never yours. One breath, steady. But you never took the one thing that mattered, what I know. And what I know just ended you. Harlan looked at Walsh, cigar out, voice flat, final. You told me she was the traitor. Turns out, the traitor was sitting at my table the whole time. Walsh opened his mouth. Nothing came out. The man who'd built a career on words had run out of them. 2 guards stood. Walsh was escorted out. Not violently. Quietly. The way you remove something that has spoiled. The door closed. The room exhaled. Harlan looked at Bonnie. He didn't speak, just nodded, once, slowly, with the kind of respect that can't be performed. Sullivan, the lawyer, opened his briefcase. I'll need copies of everything. He looked at Bonnie over his glasses. Ms. Crawford, when we send this to the FBI, they'll have questions. I've been ready for 15 years. But justice wasn't the only thing Bonnie had waited for. There was still one call to make. One number she'd memorized but never dialed. And on the other end was a 20-year-old girl who might not remember the woman who once called her Elise. The FBI came 3 days later. 2 agents sat across from Bonnie in Harlan's conference room, the same room where she'd been called a dog, where her cloth had been thrown on the floor, where she'd picked up a pen and rewritten the rules. They had questions. She had answers. Every one backed by timestamps, drives, and a notebook that read like a 15-year confession. Raymond Walsh was arrested on a Friday. At a restaurant, mid-bite, in front of a lobbyist and 2 senators. Handcuffs clicked while a waiter stood frozen holding a bread basket. It made the evening news. By Saturday, It was the only thing anyone was talking about. His accounts were frozen. Clearance revoked. 3 foreign agencies opened parallel investigations. The man who destroyed Bonnie's life in 4 weeks saw his own dismantled in 4 days. Bonnie's case was reopened. Sullivan filed the motion pro bono. Sealed records unsealed. Fabricated evidence re-examined. Walsh's planted files compared against the logs Bonnie captured. The pattern unmistakable. The conviction was vacated on a Tuesday. No ceremony, just a phone call. "It's done," Sullivan said. "You're clear." Bonnie set the phone down, pressed her palms flat on the desk, closed her eyes. She didn't cry. She sat for a long time, feeling the weight of a word she hadn't been allowed to use in 15 years. Innocent. Then she made the call. The adoption agency transferred her twice, put her on hold for 11 minutes. Then a woman's voice. "Miss Crawford, your daughter filed a contact request 2 years ago." Bonnie's breath stopped. "She's been looking for you." Sunday, a park in Virginia. Bonnie arrived an hour early, sat on a bench near the fountain, notebook in her lap, photograph in hand. Yellow dress, gap-toothed smile. 5 years old forever. Elise came from the east entrance, 20 years old, tall, brown eyes, the same ones. She walked the way Bonnie walked, steady, measured, careful. They saw each other from 30 feet. Neither spoke. Elise walked closer, stopped, looked at Bonnie's face the way you look at something you've imagined so long you're not sure it's real. "Mama B?" "I'm here, baby. I'm right here." Elise closed the distance, and for the first time in 15 years, Bonnie held her daughter. No words, just arms and breath and silence breaking open on a Sunday morning. When they pulled apart, Bonnie opened the notebook. Every page, 15 years, had the same entry. A date. 3 words. "I'm still here. Never missed. Not once." Elise read them, page after page. Tears hit the paper, blurring ink from years ago. She held the notebook against her chest. "I'm studying cryptography," Elise said, "at Georgetown." Bonnie laughed. The first real laugh in 15 years. "Of course you are." The NSA offered her old position back, full reinstatement, back pay, formal apology. She declined. All of it. Instead, she used Harlan's third condition, the one he'd agreed to blind. She asked him to fund a foundation for wrongly convicted women. Women who'd lost careers, families, identities. Women erased the way she'd been erased. Harlan wrote the check without hesitation. Signed it across the same mahogany table where this story began. Crawford House. The notebook sat on Elise's desk at Georgetown. The photograph tucked inside the back cover. Yellow dress, gap-toothed smile. A mother's promise, kept in ink, every day for 15 years. Some people speak to be heard. Bonnie Crawford stayed silent, and the whole world listened. If you've ever been laughed at for who you are, remember her. She didn't argue. She didn't explain. She picked up the pen, and in 1 minute, without a word, she rewrote everything. Drop a comment. What would you do if someone underestimated you like that? Share this with someone who needs it. Subscribe. Sheesh, they can take your job, your title, even your place at the table. But they can never take what you've learned. Patience isn't weakness, it's strategy. Sometimes silence is the loudest move you'll ever